I believe this entire war effort, with its immense toll and rate of attrition in human lives, is unsustainable. We must recognize that. I don't think Putin can maintain this for more than a few months, 2 or 3 at most. I'll explain why shortly. But for now, it's clear that Putin is engaged in a very dangerous propaganda campaign. We heard recently from Sergei Lavrov, just hours before this conversation, making a series of assertions that the war continues, though the war effort is severely strained. The most recent target is Chancellor Merz, with claims regarding Germany's deep strike weapons, particularly the Taurus missile, suggesting that Germany has no real intention to act. Thus, they argue, the war must go on. However, this isn't World War II. The troubling part is that Putin seems to be mimicking Marshal Zhukov's tactics during the Soviet push westward toward Berlin, operations that were devastating in cost. It's as though the Russian command shows utter disregard for the lives of its own soldiers. This brutal approach appears to be mirrored in the ongoing assaults along the front lines. Just days ago, Ukraine's Commander-in-Chief, Oleksandr Syrsky, relying on assessments including from the UK's Ministry of Defence, reported that Russia has lost approximately 177,000 troops in 2025 alone. That's the net loss from their active force balance. This is not sustainable. Adding to this, Dmitry Medvedev, once both president and prime minister, and now a staunch Putin ally, has declared Russia's intention to conquer the entirety of Ukraine, even if it takes years. Historically, during negotiations in Istanbul, Russian representatives referenced the 20-year war with Sweden that ended at Poltava in 1709. According to analysis by the Institute for the Study of War, at their current pace, it would take Russia 83 years and the lives of 50 million Russians to fully conquer Ukraine. These notions drift into the realm of the absurd. Another critical issue is Russia's economy, which is gradually deteriorating. It's entering a slow, inevitable downward spiral. Though not collapsing outright, it is showing clear signs of strain. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that any attempt by Putin to seize all of Ukraine would result in Russia's downfall. This may be true. Putin is gambling everything, and the stakes are immense. NATO allies, particularly Poland, Finland, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, and even Germany, are taking strong stances and have committed considerable support. If Putin insists on a prolonged confrontation with the West, especially NATO and, to a slightly lesser extent, the EU, then how long can he maintain a wartime economy at this level? Currently, around 40% of Russia's public spending goes toward the war. While they've ramped up production of Shahed-style drones, inflation is nearing 10–11%, and deficits are emerging. This trajectory doesn't look viable. Another looming problem is the so-called shadow fleet, the ghost ships smuggling sanctioned oil. Even Trump seems uneasy about this issue. Bloomberg recently reported that Putin is confident his forces can break through Ukrainian defenses and take all 4 contested regions by the end of the year. This goal is highly unrealistic. It's unclear how the drone war will evolve, and Russia seems stuck in a Zhukov-style strategy, sacrificing massive numbers of troops and hardware. While they may gain ground in Donetsk and pressure Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson, the pace is slow and costly. With the NATO summit approaching, allied nations will likely decide on the next phase of support for Ukraine. If Russian casualties approach 250,000 by mid-July, counting killed, wounded, and incapacitated, there may be a forced reassessment. However, Russian military leadership, including Gerasimov, has shown a marked reluctance to rethink tactics. Meanwhile, Putin has ordered the creation of a buffer zone along Ukraine's border. Russian troops have taken several border villages in the Sumy region, but Ukrainian forces have halted further advances. Strategically, Putin's thinking here is puzzling. While building this buffer zone, Russian military activity is rising near the Finnish border as well. Is he trying to turn the entire stretch, from the Arctic Kola Peninsula to the Caucasus, into a permanent zone of confrontation? Maintaining an army of 1.5 million troops in the field, as he suggests, would be extraordinarily difficult and would severely impact Russian living standards and the domestic economy. As casualty numbers grow, especially in cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, public sentiment may shift. For now, urban populations remain relatively unaffected, but that may change. Furthermore, cracks may emerge within Putin's inner circle, the so-called securitocracy, around Russia's National Security Council. These elites may begin to prioritize their own interests over loyalty to Putin. This dynamic was central to Prigozhin's rebellion. He rejected Shoigu's clan-like dominance over the defense ministry. Although Shoigu is now gone, that culture persists. How united are they really? It's worth questioning. And it's notable that most of these figures are in their 70s. Few young voices hold real influence near Putin. So, does Putin have an off-ramp? Could he end the war if he wanted to, despite pressure from hardliners? I believe he's vain enough to think he can. He sees himself as the smartest man in the room, and he still holds one major international card, Trump. They're both strong personalities, autocrats in different ways, and each needs to believe he's the smarter one. Putin has hinted at peace talks, sometimes ambiguously suggesting he's open to a ceasefire, but nothing concrete follows, just more posturing. Trump, known to value face-to-face meetings, would likely favor direct talks with Putin. Yet we're already 5 months into Trump's second term, and progress is non-existent. Trump might try to leverage China, whose uneasy alliance with Russia ties it to North Korea and Iran, both problematic for Beijing's global ambitions. If Trump can pressure China to pull back from this entanglement, it might isolate Putin. Beijing may subtly signal to Moscow that Ukraine is not worth undermining their broader Indo-Pacific strategy. Ultimately, that would force Putin to realize his war is far less important to China than he imagines. Let me know if you'd like this trimmed, translated into Ukrainian, or adapted into a video script.